Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So it is Friday. No, I'm not going to sing the crappy Rebecca Black song. I just felt like mentioning that it's Friday, and, I think tomorrow I'm probably going to do something that I did a couple of weeks ago and actually wind up giving myself something that resembles a day off. Although there are things that I need to do, but I think I'm going to allow myself to sleep in the morning, which means that Saturday's FPP Radio News will wind up being produced tonight. That said, let me jump into the news, and there's an update from Doctors Without Borders. I got an email earlier today with an update on the petition from change.org. They apparently have over 310,000 signatures. Why is that an important number? Why is that worth mentioning? Well, the update here says that we have surpassed 310,000 signatures for this petition, which means that we now have more than one signature for every man, woman, and child living in Kunduz. Kunduz being the province in Afghanistan where the hospital being operated by Doctors Without Borders was bombed 20 days ago by the U.S. military. The report here, or the update from change.org, written by Doctors Without Borders staff, says we also wanted to share with you a new op-ed that's an opinion editorial from Doctors Without Borders that was published in the New York Times. I will post that link in the show notes. And it says it further explains why we are calling for an independent investigation, why it is important for our staff and patients the world over, and what it can accomplish that even the most thorough U.S. or military-led investigation cannot. This petition will remain active through the 1-month commemoration of the attack, which falls on November 3rd. We are so grateful for your support and hope that we can count on you to continue sharing with your network, urging others to join this crucial effort. Next target, 500,000. And as I read this, there are currently 311,705 signers to this petition on change.org. I will post the link to this petition in the show notes, as well as the link over to that New York Times op-ed. And the op-ed has a lot of the information that I've already covered on previous episodes of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, so I don't feel the need to read this entire thing. But if you want to read it instead of going back and listening to previous podcasts, you can do so. And the information, like I said, I've covered most of this. There's a little bit of new information in this. But, again, for the sake of brevity, I will not read the op-ed, but I will post the link in the show notes. You can read that for yourself at your leisure. Now, let me jump into something different and something that sort of hits home to me just a little bit. And I'll explain as I'm going through the article. The article's from the National Journal, and the headline is, FCC Chief Vows to Require Equal Time on Television for Candidates. Now, how does this hit home for me? Well, for one, you may know that I am a candidate for president in 2016. I'm seeking the Libertarian Party's nomination. So on that hand, well, if they're saying equal time for candidates, well, I guess I qualify for equal time. Maybe. I'll explain. But also, as a journalist and as a media producer, I feel sort of mixed opinions on this whole equal time thing. Now, I don't recall if I've mentioned or not on this program, but over the last couple of weeks, I was doing a new project called Candidates Spotlight. I'll post the link in the show notes to the Facebook page. Give it a like. Watch the YouTube videos where what I did, we have municipal elections coming up here in Keene, New Hampshire. Now, a month ago, I hosted a mayoral debate before the primary where I had the three candidates running for mayor come into the studios of Cheshire TV, which is the local community access television station, and I hosted a debate for the mayoral candidates. Now, I had people ask me afterwards if I was going to do something similar for city council candidates. And I said, well, there's not time to do it before the primary, but I'll look to see what I can do after the primary before the general election. And there was one weekend in October that I could get this thing done. And that was tomorrow, actually. So I went to the library where they have rooms of various sizes, auditoriums where people can have events. And I said, I would like to rent a room on October 24th to have a candidates forum for city council candidates. And I had mixed feelings, a little bit of joy and a little bit of sadness when I was told, we would love to rent you a room on October 24th. However, we are not renting rooms from the 23rd through the 25th because we have our book sale going on that day. So we don't need any more, sort of hecticness going on. So sorry, but we can't rent you a room. So then I was thinking, what can I do? Because I would still like to do something, but I just can't do it on the day that I want. And then somebody suggested, well, why don't you have the candidates come in and record a segment? I was like, that's a brilliant idea. So I set aside 16 hours of my time over the last 2 weeks, 4 hours each Tuesday and Thursday for the last 2 weeks, the 13th, 15th, 20th, and 22nd. And I spent 4 hours each of those days in Cheshire Television in the studio where I had a setup, had a camera, had the backdrop thing, had a chair, had the lights all set up perfect, sent not emails, but I mailed invitations to all of the candidates saying I will be in studio during these times. You can either confirm a time by sending me an email, or you can just stop into the studio during this time and we'll record this segment. I wound up having 9 of the 20 candidates come in to record a segment. Most of them were between 4.5 to 5 minutes. I think I had 1 or 2 of the candidates that went slightly over. But, I'm not going to cut it off in the middle of a sentence. I'll let you finish the sentence and then stop. You're done. So I did this, and I've got all of the videos up on the YouTube. I have them in individual videos where each candidate has their own video, and then I've got them all combined into a longer 45-minute video. And that's running on the local community access. And now I'll explain a little bit more about how this equal time thing sort of hits home to me as a journalist in just a moment here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You can find it online, fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of PhonePhone right now at PhonePhone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve PhonePhone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to PhonePhone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's PhonePhone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
PhonePhone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So the equal time requirements or restrictions or regulation, what have you, they're rules that have been on the books since 1934, and I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what they are. But first I want to explain how they sort of hit home to me as a journalist. Because I'm the type of person that I think that, you know, if you're going to have a debate or a forum, every candidate should be invited. Now, there are some people that feel otherwise, but there are regulations, or part of the regulation on this equal time is that things that are identified as news programs are exempt from the equal time restrictions or regulations, what have you. And that has been defined broadly to include talk shows such as The Tonight Show. So if something can be construed to be a news program, equal time does not apply, but if it's not a news program, equal time does. And like I said, I feel very strongly about invite everybody if you're doing a debate or a candidates forum, or even what I did, come in, film a 5-minute segment. So the equal time rule says that everybody that wants the time has a chance to get the time, but as I saw, where I invited 20 people, 9 showed up. Not everybody really cares about the time. So could someone... And I realized that they wouldn't have a leg to stand on because community access television is on cable, which is technically exempt from the equal time thing. But if somebody wanted to be a prick, they could, you know, like write a letter to the editor in the local news of, Darryl did this program and he only had 9 of the candidates. Well, I can't force people to show up to record a segment. But at the same time, let's say that I'm doing a show that does not necessarily fall under the news definition of whatever equal time rule, then basically you're imposing upon me. If I have a guest that let's just say that I decide to have a guest on this program that's running for Congress. Now, somebody could say that this falls under news program. It's also not on broadcast airwaves, so therefore FCC doesn't have any jurisdiction anyway. But let's pretend for a moment that I have a radio program and I invite on a candidate for Congress. Well, based on the FCC's determination of what equal time means, they would then tell me that I must have every candidate for Congress in that district on my radio program. And I think that that's basically imposing upon others the freedom of association, and it's in some ways, dare I say, restricting their freedom of speech and freedom of expression. But I digress, and I'll jump into the article here because there are things in this article that sort of help clarify a little bit of what I've been sort of beating around the bush on. The article here, again, from nationaljournal.com, and they write, the head of the FCC promised on Thursday to enforce his agency's regulations requiring television stations to give political candidates equal time for airtime. FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler told reporters on Thursday, "The rules are pretty clear. Rules are rules. I hope that we have developed a reputation as folks who enforce the rules." Now, right off the bat, he's saying a bunch of words that really don't mean anything. We have rules. They're clear. The rules are the rules. And hopefully we enforce the rules. Now, why is equal time even in the news? Well, Hillary Clinton recently appeared on Saturday Night Live, and some people believe that that could trigger the so-called equal time rules, as could Donald Trump's plan to host the long-running NBC comedy show next month. This does not necessarily mean that Lincoln Chafee will be the next host of SNL, and, well, this article, even though it was written not that long ago, I think earlier today. No, it was written yesterday. Well, Lincoln Chafee has since dropped out of the race from the time they wrote this article until I am reporting on it. But I digress. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Lincoln Chafee or even Bernie Sanders will be the next host of Saturday Night Live, but it could mean that local NBC affiliates across the country will have to give presidential candidates access to equal television time. Under a law passed in 1934, the FCC requires broadcast television and radio stations, but not cable channels, to give equal opportunities to, quote, unquote, legally qualified candidates. The law exempts news programs, which the FCC has broadly interpreted to include talk shows such as The Tonight Show. Now, what does legally qualified candidate mean? Well, I'll explain that in just a moment, but first let's jump back to when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor or the governor hopeful in California. The rules, according to the National Journal, would likely apply to a scripted program like Saturday Night Live, and concerns over having to give airtime to other candidates led some stations to stop airing Arnold Schwarzenegger movies when he was campaigning for governor of California, and some television stations pulled reruns of Law and Order when Fred Thompson ran for the Republican presidential nomination in 2007. Lawrence Lessig, a Harvard University law professor who is running a long-shot presidential campaign to draw attention to campaign finance issues, has already filed a request with dozens of NBC affiliates to get 3 minutes and 12 seconds of airtime following Clinton's appearance on Saturday Night Live. Now, here's where this murky definition of legally qualified candidate comes in, but first a quote from Lessig's attorney, Adam Bonin, who wrote in a letter to NBC stations, quote, "We are not asking him to be placed on Saturday Night Live itself. Of course, just the opportunity he is guaranteed under federal law to use your publicly licensed airwaves to make his case to your viewers, comparable to what Secretary Clinton was afforded for free." In response, NBC asked Lessig to prove that he is a legally qualified candidate, which can be established by qualifying for ballots in at least 10 states, or substantial campaign activity. Substantial campaign activity is not defined here, and the show that you qualify for ballot access in at least 10 states, well, sorry, but there's not been any deadlines for Democratic Party candidates for primary ballots, so you're asking him to prove something that cannot be done because there's not any filing opportunities for Democratic presidential candidates for primary ballots. The article continues. It says, if the NBC stations refuse to provide airtime to Lessig, he could complain to the FCC. In an email to the National Journal, Bonin said he is delighted but not surprised by Wheeler's promise to enforce the rules. Quote, "The law on this is clear, and the FCC has been enforcing it since the early days of radio." And now the article gets into a little bit more details on the FCC, and I'll jump into this just a bit in the final moments of the show coming up in just a moment here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, FTPradio.com. Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Before I jump back into the article on fair time and equal access and the fairness doctrine, I want to make sure that I tell you about Liberty.me. And Liberty.me, they have a fairness doctrine. As long as you pay your membership, then you get equal use of their website, Liberty.me. You can use it however you want. There's the social networking aspect side of it where you can post statuses, you can post cat memes if you want, you can join groups. But there's even more. There are chat rooms and forums, things that you don't have on your traditional social networking site. There's also free ebooks, free audio that you can download, and there are also Liberty guides. Basically, they're ebooks, but slightly different. You get all of that, minus the internet trolls, because internet trolls don't want to have to pay to be an internet troll. So go to Liberty.me. Use referral code FPP Radio. Save 10% on your membership to Liberty.me. Again, once you sign up, add me as a friend. So the article here from nationaljournal.com says the two Republican FCC commissioners, Ajit Pai and Michael O'Reilly, declined to comment on the equal time rules, noting that they could possibly have to rule on disputes. Now, I do give them props for saying I don't want to comment on something that I might later have to rule on. That caveat aside, the equal time rule are distinct from the fairness doctrine, which is the now-defunct FCC policy that was reviled by conservatives and required stations to air opposing views on important issues. The agency formally repealed the fairness doctrine in 2011. Now, I've heard it said that the fairness doctrine basically died out in the 80s, which is really what led to the creation of and the formation of talk radio as we know it today, to where you can have Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity back to back to back, and they can spout their, conservative rah-rah, although I think Beck calls himself a libertarian, but he definitely sounds a lot more conservative than he sounds libertarian. But you can have that, and then you don't have to worry about, okay, well, at night we need to have these people that have an opposing viewpoint. And also the fairness doctrine sort of led people into the whole thing of there are two sides. You have this side, you have the opposite side. Well, no, there are many sides to issues. Now, there are times where two of the sides that are opposing another side may sound similar, but they're opposing it for completely different reasons. So would that be considered one side of an issue, or those two sides of an issue? How many sides can an issue have? And it's one reason that I actually am happy that the fairness doctrine no longer exists because, again, it puts that imposition on radio and television and newspaper producers to, well, no, you have to give equal time, so therefore everybody that says that they have a side, you have to give them time to present their side, you have to give them space in your newspaper, etc., etc. But no, like you should not be forcing people to do things. Freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of expression. Like, I should not be forced because I have a podcast and a website and radio shows. I should not be forced to have people's ideas expressed on my show that I don't want. The article here from the National Journal concludes, it says, Andrew Schwartzman, a media attorney at Georgetown University Law Center's Communication and Technology Law Clinic, said that it is rare for presidential candidates to invoke the equal time rules, but that the issue frequently comes into play in local and state races. Schwartzman said, quote, over-the-air television and radio remain the most important force shaping public opinion with respect to elections. A broadcaster licensed to serve the public should not be able to put a thumb on the scale. Now, again, on the one hand, I agree. If you're going to have a debate, invite everybody. If you're going to do a candidates forum, invite everybody. And one should rightly, if you're going to offer candidates time and you're doing it as a service to the community, you should invite everybody. However, if you're doing interviews because somebody, and I had this incident a couple of years ago when I did the show on Sundays and had regular guests, there was a candidate, I think, for Congress in Michigan that wound up getting assaulted and arrested while petitioning. I had him on my show because there was a newsworthy thing that happened to him. Should I then have to, well, I gave you time to talk about being assaulted and arrested. Now I have to have your competitor on my show to talk about whatever for the same length of time, even though I have no interest in having that person on. So that there's this fine line between, doing what is right and forcing people to, well, you covered this, so therefore cover everything. So I've got mixed feelings on the equal time fairness doctrine thing, but again, I am not covered under this because I'm not on FCC licensed stations with this show. I do not fall under the FCC regulations, so they don't affect me, but the fact that they exist, they affect other people, and so therefore I feel that I should have an opinion. And again, it's this thing to where the libertarian in me thinks that everybody should be treated equally. And the journalist in me thinks, well, maybe there are times when something is a news story and you should cover them. So on that side, again, like news stories aren't covered under the equal time thing, but there's no valid reason, in my opinion, no valid reason why Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump should be on Saturday Night Live. Those are comedy shows. They are not news programs. There's, basically, here's some free advertising for you to get your face out in front of the people a little bit more than somebody else, and then, hey, maybe they'll forget that other person exists. So what do you think? I don't do this a lot, but every now and then I will solicit comments. So, well, what do you think on this? Send me an email, ama@fppradio.com. Yes, I know that's the email where you submit questions, but you can send me feedback on the show. Let me know, what do you think about the fairness doctrine and the equal protection? Do you think it's something that should remain? Do you think it should be extended? Because there are people that think that it should be extended to cover news programs that, well, if you talk about this candidate, you must talk about this candidate. And then how does that fit in with the whole Citizens United thing to where they say that money isn't speech, and by giving somebody media attention that's that should be regulated and nobody should get attention unless everybody and something, and basically a very strict interpretation of the overturned Citizens United would basically say shut down broadcast radio, shut down broadcast television, shut down newspapers, because, well, giving people publicity is not speech, and you should not be allowed to do it. Doesn't matter that it's news. You're talking about a candidate. You're not talking about all of them, so shut it down. What do you think? AMA@FPPradio.com. And don't forget, I answer your questions every Wednesday. Send those AMA@FPPradio.com.